911. What's your emergency?
In 1973, two young women from Pittsburgh set out for a beach getaway in Virginia Beach to relax after their school graduation. But as they settled into the rhythm of their vacation, tragedy struck. Both women were found dead in their rented beach house. Let's dive into this unbelievable story of how it took almost 46 years to uncover what happened in that beach house in June 1973, and what finally brought this cold case to a resolution.
June 1973. Lindsay Thaler and Janice Pietropola, both 19 years old and longtime friends from Pittsburgh, arrived in Virginia Beach for a summer vacation. They rented a small beach house and planned a week of sun and relaxation. During the week, they enjoyed the beach, met several men, went on dates, and even invited some of the men to their room for a beer. Locals recalled seeing the two women enjoying beach activities, dining at restaurants, and exploring nearby sites during the first few days. A night manager at the motel informed police that he saw the women walk past his office window between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. the previous night. He noted they were alone. This was the last confirmed sighting of them alive. Some neighbors reported hearing unusual noises late one night, likely the same night the women were last seen. The next morning, Saturday, June 30th, the women were supposed to check out, but they never did. A housekeeper or property manager entered the beach house for cleaning and found both women dead under suspicious circumstances. Their partially clothed bodies were discovered, with their purses emptied and scattered on the floor. C. Thaler had been strangled, shot in the cheek and temple, and slashed in the throat with a wine bottle. Pietropola had been raped, strangled, and shot 3 times on the right side of the head. Virginia Beach police launched a homicide investigation, interviewing neighbors, examining evidence, and analyzing the scene. The autopsy and evidence collection revealed that the cause of death was unclear, leaving detectives with few leads. Evidence from the scene, including fingerprints, hair samples, and any physical signs of struggle, was carefully documented and preserved. Police interviewed local businesses, beachgoers, and neighbors, trying to trace the women's last known activities. Despite some promising leads, no suspects were identified. After months of investigation with no significant breakthroughs, the case was shelved due to a lack of evidence or suspects. The families of the two women continued to urge the police to explore new leads and periodically re-examine the case. In 1998, William Hodden, a police captain at the time, told the Associated Press,
"We did everything we could. We flew in the helicopter, we searched rooftops, we climbed into manholes."
The crime occurred on William Hodden's 31st birthday, making the case personal for him.
"I have always referred to them as my girls. I still don't know why this case was so personal."
Over the years, police suspected that the attacker entered the cottage by removing a window screen and climbing into the room. However, it remained unclear whether he had been waiting inside for the women or had entered while they were asleep. Despite advancements in DNA technology, the available samples were insufficient for conclusive testing. New theories emerged, but none led to a resolution. As the years passed, the families began to lose hope, desperately wanting to know who had killed their daughters. Then, science stepped in.
With improvements in forensic technology, a dedicated cold case unit in Virginia Beach reopened the file, retrieving preserved evidence stored in archives. New forensic methods were applied to the original evidence, revealing previously undetectable clues, such as potential DNA matches from hair samples or fingerprints. Investigators identified a match or connection to an individual who may have either been a witness or a suspect. This match could be linked through a national DNA database, which had often been unavailable in earlier years. It was a regular day for an 80-year-old man named Ernest Broadnax. He lived alone in an apartment building in Queens, New York. Back in 1973, he was a resident of Norfolk, Virginia. He didn't know that investigators had linked him to the crime using advanced forensic technology after receiving a strong lead in the case. It's not publicly known when Broadnax's DNA was added to the database, but in 2012, New York became the first state to pass a law requiring DNA collection from everyone convicted of a felony, as well as certain misdemeanors. Virginia Beach detectives arrived in New York in April 2019 to arrest him. Officers from the New York Police Department arrested Broadnax on a Monday, giving the 80-year-old a bottle of water and leading him away without using handcuffs, according to neighbor Kevin Wallace.
They gave it to him, dressed him up, and he went quietly. He went very quietly.
Police later stated that a random hit on a national DNA database led them to charge him with the 1973 rape and murder of the 2 young women at the oceanfront beach house. The case had haunted investigators for decades. Police had tirelessly searched for a potential suspect, and by the late 1980s, the case file exceeded 1,300 pages. Ernest Broadnax had a long criminal history, with 10 previous arrests for burglary, assault, and possession of a weapon. He had served time in a New York State prison, first for a 3-year sentence beginning in 1999, followed by an additional 8 years starting in 2006. His 2006 conviction for assault resulted from a violent altercation where he beat another man with a metal pipe, shattering the victim's arm. Broadnax faced 2 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of rape in the deaths of C. Thaler and Pietro Paula. He was held in New York while awaiting extradition to Virginia on April 22, 2019. A forensic report showed that Broadnax had a very high likelihood, 15 million times more than any other black man, of being the source of DNA found at one of the crime scenes. However, the case had many complications from the start. It was later discovered that Broadnax had dementia, meaning he couldn't understand or participate in a trial. As a result, the Attorney General's office decided to file civil charges against him. They sought to have a judge classify him as a sexually violent predator. This legal classification would allow the state to keep him in a mental health facility indefinitely, without putting him on trial for the crime. Michelle Schilinder, a clinical psychologist from Fredericksburg, interviewed him over Zoom and closely examined his mental health and criminal history. During her testimony at a hearing last year, she expressed concerns, stating that Broadnax had a high risk of reoffending. She diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, explaining that he often acted on impulse without considering how his actions affected others. Christy Curtis, a cold case detective from Virginia Beach, also testified at a hearing in December 2021. She shared that she spent 9 hours interviewing Broadnax at a New York Police Department precinct. During their conversation, he mentioned that he had worked at Nick's restaurant at the oceanfront in the early 1970s. He recalled 2 women named Pietro Paula and C. Thaler, referring to them as peep show girls. When Detective Curtis asked Broadnax about the charges he faced, his response was telling. He simply said,
If they said I did, I guess I did.
And added,
Fingerprints and DNA don't lie. After nearly 5 decades, the families of the 2 women finally received answers as the case was brought to court, revealing the long-awaited truth of what happened in that Virginia Beach beach house in 1973. Unfortunately, the parents of both women had passed away before Ernest Broadnax was arrested. He also died in 2022 at the age of 84.